Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
I listened, to listen to your music on so many records as a band leader or as a, collaborator or sideman. And
Sure.
I wanted to ask you, about the last one, Tough Baritones, with,
Yeah.
which I love the photo with Ronnie Cuber. It's amazing, by the way.
The
And,
photos, yeah, I know. I look like I'm standing in a hole in the picture.
Yeah, but I know you played with Ronnie, with Nick Brignola, the Three
Sure.
Baritones project. But where does your story begin with Ronnie? Like, I guess way back in the 70s already or 80s, or like how did you guys?
No, it really starts with the three. Of course, Ronnie's one of my heroes and idols, as is Nick. Once I started playing the baritone, Ronnie became really a huge influence in terms of concept and harmony and rhythm and time and sound and all of that. So. But in terms of our crossing paths was really when that band first started, the three baritone band with Nick Brignola and myself, and we actually were together 8 years. We toured for 8 years. We were very active.
Wow.
But in the middle of it, Nick unfortunately passed, and then Howard Johnson came in, and so. But Nick is. Nick as well. But Ronnie's a huge influence, and just for me being kind of like they were both older than me, being able to stand next to them and hear them play every night for years was that was a really serious education for me. So, but getting back to Tough Baritones, that was just kind of a jam session, kind of an old-fashioned blowing session, like back, kind of harking back to the old days where
Feels like
a bunch of musicians would get together and just call some tunes and play. It was a very relaxed and unstructured recording session. Ronnie brought in some Horace Silver tunes. He actually made up a couple of things just on the spot, like these kind of funk riffy kind of things that he just started playing, and the band went with it. And it was it was kind of cool just to have, be in this environment that was didn't feel particularly stressful or over rehearsed. Certainly wasn't that, but kind of an effort to kind of just have an old fashioned blowing session among friends. It's really what that was.
Was it among you? Like this? I don't know, baritone saxophones. I guess it's like own world among the saxophonists. Like, was there like already in the 70s or let's say 80s like a camaraderie between especially baritone saxophone players, or not? Like that you guys kind of supported each other when one gig opened up, or like how was there? Like, because the tenors in the 70s, when you speak to LeDonne or Billy Drews or all these guys, it was like this. I got the feeling a huge community in a way.
Yeah, well, I think the saxophone community is just, I don't think it's compartmentalized that way anyway.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's just, we're all part of this big community. But, the thing is, baritone players, we don't have an opportunity to play with each other often because in a big band, there's only one of us.
Exactly.
Where there's two tenors and two altos. And, so the baritone player with Sun Ra, I'm having a... Pat Patrick.
Oh yeah,
he did a record, a baritone saxophone record in the 70s. Very cool.
Really? Have to check it out.
Yeah. Baritone Legacy or something. And then Nick Brignola and Pepper did a record for Beehive with Dave Holland and Derek Smith and Roy Haynes called Baritone Madness. So there have been like these kind of moments in time where baritone players have gotten together and recorded and toured or played, but it's not totally common. It's certainly not like, Al Cohn and Zoot Sims or, Lockjaw Davis and Johnny Griffin or, set bands where there've been two tenors and rhythm section. So, actually Frank Basili, who's a young baritone player who's really emerging as, one of the next voices on the instrument. We have a project called Boss Baritones where we play the music of Lockjaw Davis and Johnny Griffin on
Oh,
baritone.
really? Oh,
Kind of
wow,
fun.
man.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. So we're trying to, we did a, just as when COVID was coming on the scene,
Yeah.
or in March of 2020, we did a weekend in Smalls. And so hopefully as things, we can start to play with that band again. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I imagine. Yeah, two beasts, two beast instruments next to each other. I love the sound,
It's a great, it's a fantastic sound. So, I think there's also kind of, I think trying getting the baritone kind of more present on the scene is also important because, we're kind of underrepresented and represented on festivals and
absolutely.
clubs, and, you don't see a lot of baritone saxophone led bands at very many festivals or even clubs. And, it seems to be more common in Europe. I have more of an opportunity to play.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
But in the States, it's not so easy.
Yeah. And I listened also to the last one, our Contrafacts.
Oh yeah.
You've been extremely busy. Like, I have you on the records, with Dave Holland and your stuff from the, let's say, 90s, or like the one with Christian McBride. And I listened to the last week, like to the stuff I don't have like in physical form, and it's incredible what you did in that trio. I love that, with Rodney and David. And how did you come up with that idea? I know what the Contrafact is, the idea, that you put on new hats and stuff, like, but how did you approach that album? And
well, I did there's our Contrafacts, there's alternative Contrafacts, there's Hidden Treasures, that's the one with Christian McBride and Billy Joel.
I love that one.
And then there's more Treasures, which has mostly trio with Steve Johns and Dennis Irwin, but Mike LeDonne's on a couple of tracks too, so some of it's quartet. But there was a guy who's not very well known, but really super important in terms of he was actually went to school with Nick Rignola. He's a pianist and also a psychiatrist. His name is Reese Markowitz. And he wrote for me the definitive book on substitute harmony. It's self-published. It's impossible to find. Entitled Inside Outside. It's a great book on its tritone subs and all this cycle of force and all these. It's just a treasure trove of conception ideas on substitute harmony. And he also has a book on Contrafacts. It's a self-published book.
Oh wow, really? Oh wow.
Yeah, and a lot of obscure tunes that have been recorded once, but all based on like standard "Lover Come Back to Me," "Pennies from Heaven," "All Things You Are," all every standard you could possibly think of, and all of the Contrafacts that have been recorded over the years. So that book's become kind of a Bible for me, and I've known Reese for a long time. So I spent a lot of time with him when I was younger, because he's also a collector of very obscure standards, tunes that some have not been recorded at all. In fact, my record with strings that I made is largely tunes that he gave me, and they're very obscure tunes, that nobody really plays or knows. I really like that because I like finding tunes that are kind of under the radar and not played too often, because it's just there's so many choices, so much great music out there.
You did this Art Farmer. I didn't know that one, and some other stuff.
Whalebait.
That's
Quincy Jones.
It's like some of that stuff I was like, really? And then you search, what is there? Where is that? It's nice to hear that.
And so through the years, I've been really fascinated with these Contrafacts, just because it's a very interesting source of new and fresh material. Even though some of the tunes are 50, 60 years old, they've just been recorded one time, and they never became part of the lexicon of musician. A musician played, they become just a tune on a record that somebody wrote, and then disappeared after the record. So I've really enjoyed kind of resurrecting these tunes, and because it's a way to play standards, but kind of a backdoor way to do it.
How did you approach this? Let's say you have milestones, milestones harmony. But like, how did you approach these Contrafacts? Like, you wrote the harmony, and like, how did you come up with the heads and?
The harmonies already existed.
I mean, how did you do the heads? Yeah.
They would a lot. Some of them I would just sit at the piano and they would just come to me. Some way would just go. The tune would just appear in my head. Some of it took longer. Some of the tunes were there instantaneously right away. It's just sometimes tunes appear they're complete. It's just they're just there. And other times you kind of have to kind of figure it out and work with it. But that record was kind of very organic, the development of that our Contrafacts record. And then I also wanted David and Rodney the whole idea was to have everybody contribute. Yeah. And write a couple tunes and be part of that as well. So that's a lot of fun actually. Because I
love it that it's piano-less also, it's beautiful because it's so much space in the music. It's quite cool.
Yeah, that's been that's actually my favorite way to play. I love playing pianoless trio. It's just the freedom and just being able to kind of go in any direction you want and kind of be the piano player and be the harmonic generator in that. And so I mean to me it's just the most fun way to play, most creative way to play. But also there's a responsibility in that as well in terms of I think you have to have a really deep connection to the music you're playing to do that. There's a responsibility.
Yeah, sure, definitely.
But that's not a
way more risky.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Say again.
No, I'm saying it's also way more risky. It's like which is good, I guess. Of course.
It's good. Yeah. So but of course, Jerry Mulligan had groups of that piano. John Sermon's trio. John Sermon had a great trio. I mean, that was just.
I love John Sermon.
Me too. He's one of my all-time heroes. Just wow. I mean, there's not enough, things to say how much he's influenced playing and how I love everything he does. He's just his breadth and his scope of everything that he can do is just, it's mind-boggling, man. He's limitless in terms of what he can play. I saw him play a solo concert, and this is still one of the highlights of all the music I've ever heard. At Montreal Jazz Festival. This is probably in the, maybe early 80s or something.
Oh, wow, man.
So he played a solo concert in a church with electronics and bass clarinet and all these instruments. And for an encore, he played the most stunning solo baritone version of Round Midnight. It was
really?
It was jaw-dropping. It was I still remember the effect. Every change, every voicing. It was just one of the most beautiful things I ever heard on the saxophone, on the baritone. Just, man, and I've never forgotten it. Really, that stayed with me for my whole life.
Yeah, he's incredible. I think he's also quite underrated in the States. In Europe, he's quite a big presence, but in the States, many times, I think. Yeah. He's like not spoken enough of. I mean, regarding the saxophone heritage, baritone sax especially. I mean,
Yeah, I don't recall him playing very much in the States. Yeah. Well, at least that I've seen.
No, sure.
At one point, maybe so, but which is a shame, because he deserves much more recognition, especially here. People need to hear him play because he's a genius.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you about something. When I listen to these recordings, when I hear you playing, also the tunes like that. What is that tune called you wrote? That fast bebop, the Afro Brown something.
Oh, yeah, Young Afro. That's Sweet Georgia Brown.
Yeah, but it's really fast, and the lines you play, technically it's incredible. The fast stuff. What was that like? I've read somewhere you started on alto. Did the alto playing influence also the way you're thinking, how you improvise as a horn player, or that didn't play a role actually?
No. I mean, everything's connected in music, right? There's nothing compartmentalized like that. But I never really set out to play the baritone. I always wanted to be an alto saxophonist.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, the baritone was an accident. The baritone was not anything that happened. It wasn't a conscious decision in terms of I'm going to switch to baritone. So what happened was, I grew up on Long Island, and when I grew up, there, my teachers were like Billy Mitchell the great tenor player from Detroit, and Dave Burns and Joe Dixon, who was a great saxophone player, clarinet player, flute player. And I grew up in Long Island, and Chris Woods, the great alto player, played with Clark Terry. And so we grew up playing fast. It was expected that that was just how we came up on the scene. People played tempos, which is not much anymore. You know, a young musician played fast like that. That was expected. We had to know how to do that. You know, that was just part of our upbringing. You know, so I played alto all through my teenage years and all through my, my early 20s. And I had a group on Long Island with a great trumpet player, Glenn Drews, who's Billy Drews' brother.
Oh, really?
And so great trumpet player. And we had a group for a long time on Long Island. And he got called to join Woody Herman's band. And so he left. And I was 22 years old in my last year of college, 4 weeks from graduating my graduating university with the degrees, May of 1978. And I'm on a very serious alto path. You know, I'm into full word and cannonball. I was on this straight line, alto saxophone, jazz alto saxophone. That's what I wanted to be. Phil Woods was my absolute hero in music.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the direction I wanted to go in. So it's May, early May. And so I'm finishing school and the phone rings and it's Woody Herman's band. And they say, well, Bruce Johnstone, who's one of the great baritone players of all time as well, and plays bass clarinet. I mean, just one of the greatest baritone saxophones of all time, and so he was leaving the band, and Glenn Drews recommended me. Why? I don't know, because I never played the baritone.
Yeah.
I didn't own a baritone. I had no desire to play the baritone. I never listened to the baritone. It was like so far off my trajectory and my reality and what direction I was going in. They wanted to know if I wanted to join the band playing baritone. I'm thinking, well, how did they must have gone through a lot of people to get to me, because I don't even own a baritone. I didn't even have one. So I guess I had a decision to make. I was 4 weeks away from graduating school, and both of my parents are school teachers, so I'm like, wow, they're going to be really bugged, if I drop out of school I'm almost done, it's like, they'll be but anyway, I figured, well, the flip side of this is, well, the band was touring 50 weeks a year. They're on the road all the time playing, and I wanted to play. And I figured, well, if I say no to this, I probably won't get asked again.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen? So I said, okay, I'll try. I'll do it. So I took the gig. I had 2 weeks to meet the band. So I had to buy a baritone. I bought a baritone. I had just a regular stock mouthpiece and a bunch of reeds, packed a suitcase, and had 2 weeks to memorize the baritone part of Early Autumn and Four Brothers, because Woody Herman's band was 3 tenors and a baritone. There were no altos, except for Woody played alto and clarinet. So, excuse me. So I had 2 weeks to memorize the baritone part to those 2 pieces, because they went out front and played those tunes from memory.
Yeah.
This is after not ever having played the baritone at all. So I got this baritone. 2 weeks later, I joined the band in Bridgeport, Connecticut. First gig, excuse me. And I take out my baritone and think, this is really surreal, man. This is crazy, So I take out my baritone and I sit down in my chair and I turn to my right and I introduce myself. I say, hi, I'm Gary Smulyan. And, the guy sitting next to me says, hi, I'm Joe LeDonne. So
really? Oh, man.
Seriously? So he had just joined the band. Yeah, I think he joined the band from, he was playing with Lonnie Smith and, McDuffie was doing some organ gigs. And then he joined the band. So it was Frank Tiberi playing tenor.
Oh, man.
Mark Johnson was playing bass, and he was in the middle of auditioning for Bill Evans, which, of course, he got that gig.
Sure.
And Dave Lalama, Ralph Lalama's brother, was playing piano.
Oh, wow.
And, it was it was an incredible band. So, but I had no concept of the baritone, but I had good shot because, this is kind of a roundabout story going back to playing fast.
Yeah.
I had good technique because I grew up playing. That was just, we were expected to know how to do that.
And you could side read, right? I guess. Well, so.
Yeah, I could side read, and I could, I could play fast, and I kind of kept up. But the thing that I didn't have was any concept of sound, because I didn't listen to baritones. I had no role model for that.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Which could be good, actually. Yeah, that explains many things. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know if it was good or not. Plus, I bought the first baritone I could get, the first mouth. It was real. I was in survival mode, trying to get ready for this gig because I had 2 weeks. But that was, I thought I was going to get fired every day because Woody Herman, one of his pet peeves was alto players who played baritone. He hated that. He wanted real baritone players. So that's why he had Joe Temperley was in the band, Nick was in the band, Serge Shallow. I mean, really, and Bruce. These are real baritone players, so which I wasn't. But the thing is, he saw something or heard something that he liked, that thought it was a good fit, and I stayed for 2 years, and I never played the alto again. That was
wow.
That was life transforming, man. I was I was going on straight ahead. I made a left turn to a whole other direction and never went back the other way. So it was one of those things in life where you take a chance, try something new, and your life changes. I had no clue that all of this stuff was going to happen to me, when I joined that band. I mean, really,
that's incredible.
If someone told me when I was 16 or 17 that one day I'd be sitting in Pepper Adams' chair at the Village Vanguard, I would have thought they were crazy. I said, there's no way. I play alto. There's no way that's going to be me. No way. And man, it's like life is really a crazy thing. It's like you dive into the deep end of the pool, you try something, and things change. So that made me
beautiful. That's a beautiful story. Amazing.
Incredible story. It was a total accident. It was just answering the phone. It was taking a chance, going on the road, trying a completely new thing that wound up really, changing my entire life. And it was not something that I was consciously looking for. I wouldn't have played the baritone if it weren't for that opportunity for work that Woody provided. So it's kind of a cool story. It's like, and all of these experiences and all these incredible recordings I've been able to be on, be a part of, and all the musicians I've had a chance to share the bandstand with and continue to. It's like, man, it's been really extremely special. So, I tell young students, I say, don't turn gigs down. Try things.
Yeah.
Be curious. If somebody calls you for something out of your comfort zone, do it. Don't just stay in the world where you're comfortable. And it's like try and get out there and try different things in life. It's important. And
so you develop, sure.
You just don't know who's going to be listening, or you just don't know who's going to hear you, or you just don't know. If you just stay in your zone, that's it's very limited in scope in terms of what you're going to be able to do, maybe.
And with Woody, you said the band was almost a year on the road, all the time, right?
We played all the time.
How was your progress on the baritone then through tours and through gigs? How did you notice it? How did you learn that? Did you listen to stuff during touring? Listen to records and stuff? And
I had to really discover what a jazz baritone sound was, because I didn't have that. So I would listen to Harry Carney, and I would just kind of practice along and try and copy what I heard. I would actually also listen to cello players, because the baritones is very cello like, the sound can be. So I would listen to Pablo Casals, try and get kind of sound like that. And then I discovered Pepper and Cecil Payne. Or, I just went through the whole Leo Parker and discovered all these incredible baritone players, and just really tried to get an idea of what it's supposed to sound like. Because unless you get the sound of it in your head, you can tell when someone's a baritone player and someone is, plays it as a double, or and it's not really their voice. To me, it had to become my voice. It had to be something that was identifiable with me. That was important to try and figure out. Okay, I have this instrument what am I going to do with this? How am I going to kind of communicate what's inside of me through this instrument and get the sound in my head out, you know? So,
Yeah.
and that's, I mean, and your sound changes as you grow, you know?
Yeah, sure.
You know, if you listen to Sonny Rollins you know, his sound is, and everybody's sound is like, your sound changes as you grow and as you mature. And, you know, it's just like everything else, you know, in music, there's an organic development as you get older, you know, if you're lucky enough, then, and, you know, you hang in there long enough and you want to do, you know.
Yeah, definitely. After Woody, like, how was it for you then, you know, first aspiration being an alto player, entering the New York scene, and then like you was this young baritone saxophone player coming to New York in the early 80s. What were the first gigs and the first connections I mean, I guess, you know, playing with Joe and Frank DeBerry and all these guys in Woody's band, that probably helped a little, but how was this making it in the beginning in the New York scene when you came?
Yeah, I left Woody after 2 years. I left in May of 1980 and moved back to New York. I was 24. And so we had done a tour in Europe in '79 with it was Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, and Woody Herman are the two bands. So we were kind of following each other. Yeah, so we would open for them. So we would play the first set, and then Thad and Mel would play.
Yeah, wow, man.
Which was really, man, that was Charles Davis was playing baritone at that point. And so, you know, it was Dick Oates and John Mosca and Earl Gardner and Earl McIntyre and I think Kenny Garrett might even been there. Maybe it was Steve Coleman at that point. I can't remember. And Rich Perry. So that's I met all those guys, you know, from being on the same tour with them. So, you know, they would listen to us play. We'd listen to them play. So I got to talk to Mel, and he said, "Listen, if you come to New York, give us a call. You can, you know, we'd like to have you come and sub. You know, it's like come play with the band." And you know, the thing is, you know, I'd been listening to Thad and Mel since I was a kid. You know, so I knew all those arrangements. I knew how they were supposed to sound. So, and you know, Dick said the same thing. Hey, come back. You know, if you come back to New York, when you come, give me a call. You can start to sub and come down to the Vanguard and play. I was like, okay, that sounds good. So I left, and that was it. I just started. Gary Prebeck was playing baritone at that point, and he wanted to move over to the tenor chair. So when he would kind of move over, or he had other gigs, I would just start to sub, and it just felt like a very natural fit, you know.
Yeah.
To be part of that band, just because I already was familiar with a lot of that music. I had learned a lot of that already, so I didn't feel like I was going in completely cold. You know, I felt like I was prepared and did my homework.
Yeah.
So then eventually, you know, Gary moved over to the tenor chair, and the baritone chair opened up, and Mel hired me. It was, you know, I subbed for probably a year, maybe less than a year or whatever, but end of 80, early 1981, I became a permanent member of the band, and still there. So it's like 40 years, maybe we're right, 80, 90. Yeah, it's like 40, you know, it's a long time, man, to be holding that, which is, I never thought I'd be doing that either. You know, a lifelong gig, you know, it's been beautiful to be part of that band. And our sax section, you know, Ralph LaLama, Rich Perry, Billy Drews, and Oates and myself, we've been together a long time, you know, over 30 years without any changes in the section. So we really had a really cool, it's been a very beautiful organic development in terms of our sound, you know.
Yeah, that's so important with, like, as a horn section, you know, to have this, to hear the other sounds and kind of know what to expect also from them, to create this chemistry and gel it all together. Yeah, I love that. It's so
well,
cool.
The thing is, you know, in terms of like a jazz saxophone section, if you look at, you know, like Duke Ellington section with, you know, Johnny Hodges and Paul Gonsalves and you know, Jimmy Hamilton and Harry Carney and Russell Prokop, you know, it's five really unique voices, but when they play as a section, it becomes this beautiful whole that's just, you know, and Basie's section too. So I think, you know, and of course the original section, Jerome Richardson and Jerry Dodgen and Joe Farrell and Eddie Daniels and and Pepper. I mean, that's also one of the great saxophone sections of all time. But it's 5 unique sounds and 5 unique concepts and personalities on the instrument that it's important not to sacrifice your sound or your personality. That's what makes it so great, is that everybody sounds like them. They're not changing anything.
Yeah, you serve the music always, right? Then in that case, kind of,
you don't have to adapt into something else in the section. You still, that's what you want. You want 5 unique voices, or 5 voices, individual voices that come together to create this beautiful whole.
Yeah, I agree. But it's still like, you developed your own voice, obviously, like, and like, when was the moment when you felt like, I wanna present this voice as a band leader? I mean, when you did the Lure of Beauty, I think it's like 91, right? It was 91, and at that point, Jerry Teakins from Crisscross Records was doing a lot of recording, so he asked me if I wanted to do a record. He asked you, okay.
Yeah. Because he used to come hang out at the Vanguard, and he was always interested in recording younger musicians, the younger cats who were just kind of emerging, but also he grew up be like, Warren Marsh and Jimmy Rainey and, got guys on the scene as well, but he had this, and so through the years, he was very cool with me. He let me do some really big projects, he was really incredibly generous. I mean, and also, so, going back to Woody's band, and also the Bob Belden, was a great tenor saxophone.
Yeah, man, I love Bob. Yeah.
Composer, arranger. I mean, the guy was so brilliant. A genius, I think. That word gets thrown around, but I mean, I really think he was. Wow, and all these beautiful projects he did, like Turandot, the Black Dahlia.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh my God, this guy is so brilliant. So anyway, so we collaborated. Bob came out of North Texas and took over Lovano's chair, and we became really close friends. He was, through Woody's band. So we collaborated on 3 projects. He did a record with the saxophone section of Mel Lewis's band and myself. He wrote 5 saxophone arrangements called Saxophone Mosaic.
Oh, yeah.
That was on Chris, and Jerry okayed the budget for that. He was like, okay. And then we did a record called Blue Suite, where Bob wrote an 8 movement suite of different ideas on the blues, with a brass ensemble, large brass ensemble and rhythm section. And that was like, I think 8 or 9 brass.
Oh man, yeah.
And that's and then we did this record with strings.
Yeah.
Which Bob wrote the arrangements to. So, we did that whole record. We did that record in 4 hours.
Really? Oh man.
That record with strings. Because it was the first time that Crisscross was doing a record with multi-tracking. Usually they did live to 2-track.
Yeah.
And there was an issue with the board. And we had no rehearsal. But luckily, we had Mark Feldman and Regina Carter, and we had the string section was just
killing,
terrific.
Yeah.
So, but we lost 2 hours because they had to fix the problem with the board. So we were just sitting around. So at the end of the day, we had 4 hours to do this record, and with no rehearsal, and that record really came to be because of Belden was so organized and he was so together in the studio. And I mean, he really pulled that off. That was we played, but he made that happen. So that record is every take is 1 take, and we didn't listen back. No listen back. Wow. And then we did a second pass with the strings. So we did that record in 4 hours and didn't listen to 1 note. We just next tune, play, record, do a second pass with the strings. Next tune, No, I mean, it was just
Wow.
4 hours later we had the record. And we had no idea what we had. We didn't even know. You know, it might not have been worthy to come out, but
Yeah.
man, it actually turned out to be a nice record, you know. But that was a stressful day because we were really we were under the gun time wise in the studio. We only had 4 hours.
Yeah, that's tight, man. Yeah.
But I'm just saying that Jerry was really cool in terms of these big projects, which, you know,
Yeah.
not a lot of people were doing for him at the time. And he let me do this, you know, his tune of Pepper Adams tune called Homage.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I got to spend 8 hours in the studio with Tommy Flanagan, which was,
how was that like? Yeah, I wanted to ask you that.
yeah, I'm still on cloud 9 on that. That was probably, I think, of all the people that, you know, I've had a chance to play with. And I think being in the studio with Tommy Flanagan was the high point for me. It was just, you know, at that point he was playing just trio. He wasn't doing a lot of recording as a side. He wasn't doing a lot of, you know, he was pretty much playing with his own trio. But I think because it was Pepper's tunes and his connection to Pepper Adams that, you know, he agreed to do it. And that was, wow. The fact that he agreed to do that was astonishing to me, you know. So, and so that was, I mean, he took care of business, man. He's just, you know, once again, no rehearsal, you know, just come in. Yeah. We played these tunes and, you know, a couple hours, you make a record. You know, I kind of like that. You know, it's you kind of.
Oh, I love that, man. It's. This is how you should do it. Like, you know.
What do you mean? Yeah, like, I don't know.
You know, that it goes fast. Like my first record I did in New York was with Tony Malaby, Mark Alas, and Tom Rainey.
Yeah.
And it was my first experience in Systems 2, and we did it in 2 hours. Like, it was just like, man, this is how this goes, you know, like, this is super, you know, I save up money, everything, you know, it sounds amazing. Well, that's it, you know.
No, the thing is that, you know, a jazz record, it's just a moment in time, you know. It's
exactly.
Just capturing a moment in time and you're putting it out into the world, you know. It's not about being perfect. It's not about the perfect solo. I mean, everybody gets so wrapped up into this about, you know.
What is the perfect solo anyway?
Yeah, or overdubbing their solo.
Yeah.
You know, let's do another take. I mean, to me, it's like the more takes you do, it just every progressive take gets worse.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
You know, absolutely. So it's I don't know. It's not. I don't often feel very stressed out in the studio. I feel like, well, we're just going to capture a moment here, and most of the time it works. You know.
Yeah, sure. Like, but for that first record, you have like Mulgrew, you know, talking about great pianists.
Oh boy!
How did you play like at that time with Mulgrew, or was that just for a session? And Jimmy Napper, he's on trombone, right? Also, like incredible band. Like, how did you hook up that band together? I mean, how did that happen?
Well, that was you know, I mean, I love the records Pepper Nepper, you know, the Jimmy Nepper and Pepper Adams. So that was like a natural fit for me to, you know, to have a chance to record with Jimmy, you know. And I played with Lee Konitz's Nonette. And that's also where I heard Ronnie in that band, you know, and so Jimmy was playing in that band as well. And
that's okay.
You know what I mean? So I got to know Jimmy through some projects in New York just from hearing him in New York. So he agreed to do it. And Mulgrew was just, you know, he was on the scene playing with everybody at that point. And
sure.
You know, I basically called him, you know, just. He was recording, doing gigs as sideman, recording all the time. So, and that was Dennis, I think, right? No, Ray Drummond.
Ray Drummond is on bass, yeah, exactly.
Kenny Washington, you know. So, I mean, Chris Cross was recording a lot of same kind of rhythm section players.
Yeah, Kenny is like on 40 records, I think, like. Or something.
Kenny was on a lot. Dennis was on a lot.
Yeah.
Ray Drummond was on quite a bit, you know. So. It was like kind of, you know, Jerry Teakins would come to New York and record, you know, 20 records, and a lot of the same people would be on the same records, you know, in terms of rhythm section wise.
Yeah.
But, you know, once again, we went in there and we had no rehearsal and we had never played together before, you know. So,
oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay. Well.
Yeah, there were no rehearsals for these records. There was never any budget for rehearsals.
Yeah.
It was basically show up and, you know, here's the music, and and I mean, everyone plays at such a high level that
Yeah,
there's
sure.
no room to rehearse.
Sure.
And these tunes, it's they're. I mean, you try not to bring overly complicated things anyway, just because you don't have a lot of time to linger on things anyway.
No, but you wrote beautiful music, like for that record also, But I wanted to ask you, like, did you lead bands already before that, like in the 80s, like being a band leader, or no?
No.
So
No, I didn't have a lot of opportunities to. That was my first record as a leader, being in the studio, times of being responsible for everything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, did you feel like certain pressure or like this responsibility, like being the one who's not?
No, I didn't feel it was pressure because I was organized. I had the tunes.
Yeah, okay.
I knew what things wanted to sound like, and I'm playing with people that you trust and people that you like to play with. You just kind of know. You can already hear it in your head what it's going to sound like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, sure, absolutely.
It's not like you're put in a situation where you're not really sure what's going to happen. Even though in a recording studio, who knows, right? Things happen. But like I said, I knew Jimmy's playing.
Yeah.
Knew him as a person. So he was. I mean, one of the greatest musicians of all time in terms of his harmonic concept, his ideas. He was really cool in terms of he would suggest things on tunes. Let's try this a little slower. Why don't we do this?
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
I mean, he was very cool and very helpful to me because, like I said, that was my first time in the studio. So he was also very cool, with me and understanding, and he knew all that. But I was more excited than scared, more nervous.
Yeah.
It was exciting to record as a leader, and once again, another thing that I never thought, would happen. But, I haven't really had a lot of opportunities through the years to lead bands anyway. I don't know. That's just, I don't know if that's a baritone thing. I mean, if you really look at, the trajectory, the history of the baritone, there's, in terms of having their own bands,
yeah, like touring bands, you mean, like, or
Mulligan's really the only only baritone player who's really done that.
Actually, yeah. I mean,
out of all the tenor players and all the alto players that have working bands,
yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, sure. This percentage is really small. Yeah, true. Funny.
So it's. I don't know if that's like I'm not really sure the reason for that, but just that I don't know why. I'd love to have my own. Be a band leader and tour with my own thing, my own ideas, because I'd love to play just with the trio, with David and Rodney.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah,
it'd be a lot of fun, but there's not a lot of opportunities there.
These are, yeah.
And it's strange.
And it's strange, yeah. I
think a lot of it is just playing the baritone. The baritone, it's not like a commercial.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Thing like the tenor and the alto is.
Maybe
whatever that means,
But yeah, something has to do with this. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you this. Beside being a band leader and you've done so much work, and the one thing that pops up is, you said like when you entered Woody's band, you side read well already, and you had the chops from the alto. And I wanted to ask you, how did you start playing with Dave Holland? And how was that experience? Like, because when I listen to those records, Overtime or What Goes Around or the Octet Pathways, that's my favorite because it's smaller. And how did you cope with that fairly complex? I mean, it's really complex music and the arrangements and everything. How did all that come together? And how did your story with Dave begin, actually?
Well, I mean, Joe Lovano recommended me. I think Dave was putting his big band together. And I think Dave called Joe and asked him if he knew any baritone players.
Oh, okay.
That would be so. Joe actually recommended Dave. Dave just called me out of the blue. I was home, and Dave called me and said, "Hey, Dave Holland, I'm putting this big band together. You want to?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Sure.
That was, my God, I was on cloud nine. After he called, and and Antonio Hart and Chris Potter.
Yeah, it's like the band is
Mark Rose. I mean, just
Steve Nelson,
Steve
Robin
Nelson,
Eubanks. It's like killing.
Oh my God, it was. But I didn't grow up playing. That was a challenge for me. That was one of the most challenging musical experiences for me, because that put me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
because you know I didn't grow up playing odd meter music.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I didn't, you know, and especially growing up and playing, you know, Dave wrote beautiful tunes. I mean, his
That's
tunes,
beautiful, yeah.
beautiful, but he would also write, you know, these odd meter vamps that would just kind of loop and go into a next section to another harmonic section.
Yeah.
You know, meanwhile it's all odd meter and all this shit. I mean, I didn't grow up, you know, I grew up playing bebop and playing
Yeah,
tunes, playing
exactly.
on changes. So for me, this was really like, you know, it was really challenging for me, and that was probably, in terms of all the musical situations I was been in, that was the one where I felt most like kind of a little bit of fish out of water, just because it took me a long time to get my grounding in terms of, once I figured it out, I felt okay. But, you know, every time Dave would bring in a new arrangement, I would say, if it's odd meter, give it to Potter. Don't give it, you know, I want to play in 4. I don't want to play, you know, I'm like, you know, so for me, it was very, you know, it was a little nerve wracking because, you know, Potter plays great in odd meter. I mean, he plays great.
He's a monster. Yeah.
But he plays ridiculous when all, you know, when it comes to that, you know, the kind of music, Dave's music. I mean, you know, also, you know, Chris was part of the quintet for, you know, forever. So he was really familiar with Dave's concept and his tunes and what Dave was kind of writing for. So I kept, oh man, I could please bring, I want to play in 4/4, please, you know. I don't just give it. So I was like, you know, it was, but in the end, it was, I grew a lot because
I can imagine.
It got me out of the zone of, you know, of what I was usually comfortable with, you know, and I loved being in that band.
Yeah.
That was another incredible high point, you know, and just touring with them and just being around Dave was, you know, was just the most honor in my life. Just the way he is as a person too, just the way he conducts himself and acts. And I mean, he's just a role model as a human being and as a musician, you know. Just
how is he as a band leader to you guys? Like really open, or like when it comes to music, like?
No. He was wide open, you know. And the thing is, you know, he picked people because he had a certain sound for each instrument.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you were there because he wanted you to be there. You know, he heard there was something that he liked in everybody's playing, and then when the band plays an ensemble, we had this. There was a, you know, coming together in an ensemble sound that this was all, you know, picked by him. That was kind of
Ellingtonian way of
He was very into Strayhorn and Ellington. Those are his. You know, and he's completely self-taught in terms of.
I didn't know that.
Large ensemble arranging. Yeah, he
oh wow.
He taught himself, and he really has a real. I mean, you hear, you know, one tune, and he has a voice with the orchestra, how he arranges and orchestrates. That's really particular to him. And you know, the baritone parts were really fun to play. You know, because he studied Ellington and Strayhorn, and the baritone always had the best notes.
Yes.
A lot of times in big band, the baritone plays the roots. You know, it's like not a very interesting part to play. But, you know, with Dave's music and Thad's music and Brookmeyer's music, you know, and Neely's music and people who really understand, you know, how to really write, the baritone is a really important voice in the big band in terms of how you use the baritone in the ensemble. You know, so just playing the parts was great too, because I had really interesting notes to play. Dave gave me really great notes to play, and I got to play. You know, a lot of times we would double vamps. He would play the vamp, and I would play and we would just be baritone and bass vamps, and I got to just play with him. You know, deal with his time and his sound. And that was. I still get goosebumps thinking about, you know, just playing these ensemble parts with him. You know, just. That was ear opening, eye opening, every musical opening. That was an experience that was transformative, you know, just and also of course getting to hear everybody play. You know, everybody played so great in that band.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's beyond. Yeah. That took that Pathways, man, that's like such a record. I mean, the big band stuff is incredible as well over time. But
yeah.
Just because it's a smaller group, that one I love, you know, because it's more spacious. It's incredible to hear you guys I mean, what Nate and Dave play also, you know, when they play in 7, it's not like dun, dun, gung, gung, gung. It's like
Oh no, they go
dun,
across the
dun,
bar
go,
line. There's
go.
no. It's so fluid and so free and so open. And then, you know, Chris on top of that floats over the top, and Antonio, they float over the top. I don't know how they do that. I really don't. I mean, they just, you know, there's no downbeat for it's just looping, just this whirling sound of rhythm, and eventually, boom, there's a downbeat. It's like, how did they do? I mean, that's terrifying to me.
No, it's beautiful. Yeah, but I know what you mean exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, please don't ask me to do that.
But did you solo also like over odd meter structures in those?
Not too much. I think Dave had mercy on me.
Okay.
On an old bebopper. No, there was Pathways. That first tune that's in 3, right?
Ebb and Flow. No.
That's in 3. It's kind of like, and also that first tune on the Big Band record. It's been a long time. I don't remember names, but it's just kind of G major. I mean G dominant, but it's groups. It's one chord in groups of 3.
Oh yeah.
So it's, you know, ba 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 ba. It's basically a G7, but it's grouped in three measure groupings. So it's basically, it's one chord, but there's a rhythmic structure to it. Yeah, which that was hard for me too.
Yeah, it's incredible. But when you listen, it all ends amazingly how we sound together. You know, like
I hope at some point we can, you know, meet again. And I hope we can do another tour, another record. I hope we can play again. I don't know if Dave wants to, you know, it's a lot of people to manage on the road.
Yeah.
It's a lot to organize, but it would be really great to have one more chance to have an opportunity to play this music again.
I'd love to hear it too. You know, he's doing like lots of small stuff now, like duo with Schofield and, you know, like trios and, I love the quintet stuff and the big band. It's incredible, man. It's like,
he has a group with Zakir Hussain and Chris.
Chris, I saw them live 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it's beautiful, right? It's a lot easier to travel with too. You know,
it makes sense.
It's hard to be on the road with, you know, 15 people or 18 people. Trying to move that around every day is it's hard.
It's a project.
But anyway, that remains one of the high points of, you know, for me, being able to make music with Dave Holland in that band. That was I'm so thankful for that opportunity.
Yeah, I can believe. Yeah, I just, Gary, just one more question, not to take too much of your time. You said that Joe Lovano kind of, you know, suggested you to Dave's band, like, and you played with Joe in Woody's band, like late 70s, and then you have this incredible group with Joe, of course, the 50 seconds kind of, How did that story happen? And did you play with Joe also in the 80s? I mean, probably with Mel, I guess, a little, but like in small groups, did you guys cooperate also before, like in the 80s? Or how did your story with Joe begin? And this Nonette, how was that formed? Like,
well, I mean, it was really, you know, I met Joe and Woody's band, and he left, moved back to join Mel Lewis. Then he joined Mel Lewis. You know, and Joe and Glenn Drews, they had a loft on 23rd Street, you know, so everybody was playing all the time. I mean, there was a lot of, you know, back in that time in New York, there were a lot of sessions and jam sessions and places to play. And so everybody's paths our paths were always crossing. So
you basically caught like the last train of the loft scene kind of, or still?
No, it wasn't really the loft scene so much. It was more like there were jam sessions, like, you know, different clubs. Like Ralph LaLama was really, you know, he would run 2 or 3 jam sessions a week, from 11 to 3 or 11 to 4. You know, so there was a lot of playing opportunities. New York was really kind of magic at this, you know, at that point. There were a lot of clubs and a lot of places to play. You know, Bradley's was still there, and you know, and the Angry Squire, which was around the corner from Joe's apartment. And like I said, Joe had this loft, and I lived in a building on 34th and 10th, which was a 5-story kind of a dump. You know, it was kind of a slum tenement building, but we had musicians in every we had musicians in every apartment almost. So the whole second floor was drummers. Tom Whaley, great drummer who played with Mose Allison. Frankie Dunlop moved in there at one point.
Really? Oh man. Wow.
And we had a bunch of saxophone players. So we had jam sessions. This building became kind of like it was 440 10th Avenue. So I mean, we played basically 24 hours a day in this building. And all kind of cats came through. Sal Nistico, Junior Cook. Man. We had all kinds of people coming by to play all the time. We would just kind of gravitate to all the drummers on the second floor. So the jam session moved, and people would, it was really it was an amazing scene, So, I became, Joe and I stayed close from, Woody's band. And then he put this idea, I think in the back of his mind, he had this idea of, putting together a group of saxophone player, friends that he wanted to play with. So it was Ralph and Steve Slagle and myself and Larry Farrell on trombone and Barry Reese and Tim Hagens. And, so I think this idea had been percolating in his mind for, a long time as a way for friends to have a band and hang out and play.
Yeah.
And, so it kind of developed from that, it was more like a desire kind of like to present some music with friends and colleagues, and it developed into this.
It's a beautiful,
which became that record, 52nd Street Themes, and we were actually very active too. We were touring. We would go to Europe for weeks at a time. It was John Hicks and Lewis Nash and Dennis. It was, we had a great time. So all these opportunities that came that if I had continued to play alto, I don't know if it would have been different. It might, I have no idea what the trajectory would have looked like, long term, but it would have been different from this.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, I'm consider myself extremely fortunate to be, around the music at that time and going through now, and have, the opportunity to play with all these wonderful friends and musicians that I've been able to meet through all the years. It's like, it's a huge blessing to be a musician, as you know, right?
True. I would not change it for anything,
Yeah. We're so fortunate to live in this world.
True. I agree. Like even more during this COVID lockdown, you more started to realize that actually sometimes you take this for granted, but then you realize, wait a second, it's,
yeah, we've all had
it's special. Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we can start to gradually emerge again. It's been really a weird almost 2 years. It's
bizarre time. Yeah,
it's a bizarre time. So that's why you doing shows like this and other people doing interview shows and podcasts. Yeah,
I think it's important for jazz to do that also.
Well, it's like I said, we need to connect.
Yeah,
more than ever. We're just everybody's home. It's we're not used to it. I've been home, since March of 2020. I've never been home like this.
Bizarre, yeah. I know, that's incredible.
It's really strange. And other people that I think maybe I wish and nobody knew it was going to go on for so long. Yeah. Everyone thought, a couple of weeks, we'll see what happens. But man, it just went on and on and on. And, I wish I used my time better.
Well,
some people learn a language. Some people learn another instrument. Some people, some people really looked at that.
You should start playing the alto again.
No, I don't own an alto. Hey, actually that would be kind of interesting to play to see. I don't know.
Imagine now you would go back on that road now,
hey.
Things. No, come on, don't do that.
No. At this point, that would be crazy. Yeah. But it would be fun to play one just to see what it felt like.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Food for thought, exactly. Cool. Well, Gary, thanks so much. Thanks so much for sharing all these thoughts, man. So appreciate it.
Thank you for including me as part of your series, man.
I'm so happy. So
Dr. Jazz.